Welcome to Learning Plan 7, Secondary Traumatization, Burnout, Physiological Process of Stress, and Remediation Techniques. This learning plan will go into a lot of detailed information regarding stress, how the physiological process works, and secondary effects if not cared for. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, trauma, and community disorders will be explored. The effects of natural disasters, burnout, and community disasters such as gun violence and shooting will be examined, as well as comparing the interventions used in these situations like critical incident stress debriefing and psychological first aid. This will give you a lot of good information for your first PAT, where you're writing a paper on critical incident stress debriefing, comparing it to psychological first aid, your disaster paper. So pay close attention to this learning plan, and also you may want to get started on that paper if you haven't already. Let's look at the checklist of activities. The learning activities include watching this video, reading Chapter 7, reviewing your PowerPoints, and watching a couple really great videos. There's one on PTSD and a short video clip on critical incident stress debriefing. And a group recounts a shooting, and there's a short video clip on burnout. A burned out woman seeks help. You will complete quiz 7, and you will complete a discussion board post and 2 responses. And as always, working on that disaster response intervention paper, this learning plan will help that a lot. Compile facilitating a crisis intervention, and compile your crisis intervention paper. Let's briefly review Chapter 7. Chapter 7 includes talk about PTSD. That's a common syndrome that develops when people experience a life-threatening trauma. People suffering from PTSD often oscillate between re-experiencing the trauma and numbing themselves to the trauma, and they also show a variety of anxiety symptoms. Crisis intervention may be done at an individual level or a community level when the trauma is a community disaster. Think of Hurricane Katrina. Critical incident stress debriefing and trauma response are often provided when groups of people experience the same trauma, such as natural disasters or man-made disasters. Think of some of the school shootings we've had, unfortunately, in the past 5 years. Most people consider the treatment of PTSD to be the most effective if it occurs soon after the trauma, and crisis intervention is very effective. This chapter includes the effects of trauma on young children, discusses military service, talks about personal and family victimization, and please pay attention to the 4 phases of community disasters. On page 160, there's a true story related to the attacks on 9/11, as well as gun violence and shootings. All of these chapters, you can think of the nightly news. You can relate to the nightly news and a lot of the stories that you hear around the world. Just recently, there was a shooting on a train in Paris. Just recently, there have been attacks in various cities in the United States and abroad. And people who experience those disasters or those traumas will need help afterwards. They discuss burnout and secondary traumatic stress. You should know the difference. Please begin to role play on page 171. There's several cases to role play. You should practice the ABC model. And they talk about therapeutic treatments commonly used to treat PTSD. Some key terms include disassociation, EMDR, 4 phases of community disaster, secondary PTSD or secondary traumatization, and of course PTSD. I hope you learn a lot in Learning Plan 7.